A lonely, decrepit house stands sentinel against a black night sky. The October moon showing down bright. A thin stretch of roadway extends from the house a mile, and a single file line of hearses arrive, each with a guest for a night of terror in Hill House. An eccentric millionaire offering $10,000 to any that survive the night. Can you? Coming right up on RPG Retro Reviews. If you're a fan of Funhouse Dungeons like I am, then be sure to check out Dark Wizard Games' Kickstarter for the brand new softcover release of Hanging Coffins of the Vampire Queen, now for 5th edition. The 5th edition module has a full color map on the inside cover, as well as new black and white artwork. Dark Wizard Games is celebrating their 10-year anniversary, and you can also pick up the original 1st edition module for Advanced Dungeons & Dragons or Osric, which is only available via this Kickstarter. If you are a collector or a fan, you don't want to miss out. Grab a copy now. One last treasure you can acquire is the softcover recipe book, Inn of the Whistling Pig, which contains 16 rustic real-world items you can cook with your family and friends. Check it out now. A link to the Kickstarter is in the description. Thank you to Dark Wizard Games for sponsoring this video. Hello everyone, I'm Captain Courageous and I review old school modules and games and try to give them a fun and informative analysis. This week I'm doing something a little bit different, and I'm actually going over my own preparations for the play and results for my annual Halloween horror game. This is a tradition that I've been running for my friends for over 20 years now. As the season turns to spooks, ghosts, and goblins, what better time to run a horror game one-shot? My groups for these events usually consist of between 6 to 8 players, some from my regular weekly Dungeons & Dragons game, but also those that don't get to game as often as they'd like, and occasionally those who are more casual gamers or not really into role-playing games normally. So while in years past I have used the Call of Cthulhu role-playing game, I later transitioned to using the horror game Dread, which is really great for those one-shot horror games, as the game mechanic of the Jenga Tower is very simple. This year, however, I did something a bit different. I used Dan Master's Eldrich Hack RPG, and I have to say I was quite pleased with the results. Eldrich Hack is a rules-light horror role-playing game that is great for a one-shot horror and perfect for casual gamers. It's D20 based and uses polyhedral dice for weapon damages. The rules entirely on one page for the most part. Character creation is amazingly fast, and while I created the character backgrounds for the game beforehand, I left it to the players to roll their statistics right at the table before play began and as each player arrived, and it worked out great. I'll leave a link to the Eldrich Hack RPG horror game on DriveThru RPG in the description. It's only $5.99 and definitely worth checking out. There are no ability scores to worry about in Eldrich Hack. In general, you only need to roll a d20 and beat a target number, usually 10 or better. Of course, the game master can modify this up or down as appropriate for the situation. Weapon damages are your usual polyhedral dice types, D4 for daggers, D8 for swords, D10 for a rifle, and so on. While not a combat-heavy game, characters might have some skill listed in melee styles of combat, such as martial arts or fencing, for example. In those cases, the player can add their skill number to the roll. Character creation is simple. Roll your skill, use 3d6, and keep the die that rolls the highest. That's your modifier for any of your professional skills. Lore typically starts at 0. Hit points are 6d6 divided by 2 round up, and sanity is 2d6. Keep the highest roll and add 3. Choose a profession and you get the skills listed beneath, as shown here, and you're done. Of course, you can modify these as approved by the Game Master. The Game Master section goes over the combat rolls, which are straightforward. When a character's hit points reach 0, they are unconscious. If below 0, roll a d20 on this chart, and as you can see, on a 1 to 10, they die in a gory way. 11 to 20, roll a d6, and they survive that long until someone can stop and stabilize them. I made modifications to that roll. The first is just a basic mechanic, since there is no ability scores. If a character successfully hits with a weapon they have a skill in, they roll their damage with advantage. A character with half their hit points roll their damage with disadvantage. It's hard to knife fight or take aim with a weapon when you're in pain from grave injury. The other change I made is with the death mechanic. Instead of rolling a d20, I had the player consult a magic 8-ball, posing the question, is my character dead? This isn't as crazy as it might sound once you know that inside a magic 8-ball is actually a d20 with the answers written on each side, as you can see here. Thus, there are 20 possible answers, 10 of which are affirmative answers, 5 are non-committal, and 5 are negative answers, as you can see in this chart here, listing all possible outcomes. Thus, in game, it works like this. On a negative answer, your character dies immediately, and this is exactly the same odds as the regular d20 roll. If you get a neutral answer, you survive until the next round or until someone comes along to stabilize you. If you get an affirmative answer, you stabilize at 1 hit point. The adventure for the night was inspired by the original 1952 movie House on Haunted Hill, starring legendary horror actor Vincent Price. In the movie, millionaire Frederick Loren throws a ghost party, offering 5 strangers $10,000 apiece if they can survive one night in the legendary house on Haunted Hill. Along the way, his scheming wife Annabelle, along with one of the guests, Dr. David Trent, whom she is having an affair, plots his demise. The guests are locked in the house at midnight and endure an assortment of terrors as the night progresses. The ending to this movie is a bit amusing and unintentionally comedic, with Price's Frederick Loren character manipulating this ridiculous life-size skeleton contraption, which freaks his wife out so much she falls into a vat of acid in the floor. This movie is an underrated classic. It's free to view on YouTube, so you should probably check it out when you get the time. This year, I thought it would be fun to try and manipulate something similar, though with a Lovecraftian twist, of course. I redid the entire house background so that now the original family that owned the house were worshippers of Yog-Sothoth. There's a secret temple in the basement where resides a trapped spawn of Yog-Sothoth. All the murders and deaths attributed to the ghosts and haunting of the place are actually the result of the creature attempting to break the seal, keeping it trapped in the basement. It needs only but to consume a few more souls, and then it will escape its bonds and be free to join others of its kind in the world that are preparing for the arrival of Yog-Sothoth. Enter Frederick and Annabelle Loren and their ghost party. For the most part, I lifted the backgrounds of the characters directly from the movie with a few minor alterations. I made the character of Nora Manning an antiquarian that occasionally does obscure research for Frederick Loren. She has younger siblings she needs to take care of, for both of her parents are ailing and in poor health. The gossip reporter Ruth Bridges has a gambling problem and likes to wager on the horses. Lance Schroeder is a retired Air Force pilot, recently divorced and struggling with his alimony payments. David Trent is, of course, having an affair with Annabelle and in cahoots with her, plotting her husband's demise. The biggest change is to Watson Pritchard, whom I made an archaeologist, thus justifying a cool trophy room full of various artifacts, spears, tribal masks, a rifle on the wall, and the like. In some ways, Watson Pritchard is an aide to the game master, and that he knows the house very well, the legends of the deaths there, the Hill family, and of course his own personal tragedy in which his sister-in-law went crazy some years ago and killed her husband and son, Watson's brother and nephew, and almost killed him. Thus, he's not lived in the house for some 15 years. He continues to employ the elder caretakers Jonas and Sylvia Slides. They are strange and mysterious. The elder couple seem almost hollow in their look and mannerisms. They claim to never have seen anything unusual in all their years of living there. During the game, If they are with a PC when something strange happens, they'll simply act confused when asked about it. What? I have no idea what you're talking about, sir. They are harmless, however, and can answer quite a few questions about the house. To assist the player of Watson Pritchard, I made a cheat sheet to give that not only fills in more detail in his background and the murders, but also more information on the rooms which Pritchard can use while giving a tour of the house later on in the evening, and also knowledge of a strange book that he's removed from the library and placed in a safe behind the portrait in the office. His cheat sheet also encourages the player to have fun with it and to feel free to fill in everything else with whatever he wanted and just kind of go with it. It was a lot of fun. I gave him some character quotes such as this. When handed a gun, "These are useless against the dead. They only work on the living. There's been a murder in almost every room in this house." Or my favorite, "When blood falls from the ceiling onto a guest, the house has mocked you." So in the movie, Frederick and Annabelle open with a bit of a spat that establishes their confrontational relationship. And to do this, I wrote a short script for the players to read during the beginning portion of the game. Now, some GMs do not like this tool as they feel it might impinge on player character agency. There might be a point to that there, but I feel that this is a very entertaining and fun way to provide an information dump to the players without just reading it to them, which to me is very boring. In addition, since this is a one-shot and the players are using pre-generated characters, this quickly helps get them into character. The opening scene has several amusing lines and situations, with Annabelle pouting about the entire affair, claiming she's not coming down for the party even though it was all her idea. The entire stay the night concept with complete strangers is actually all Frederick's idea, which is what she's kind of miffed about. The banter back and forth with each character getting subtle digs in each other, which, when we played it out at the table, got laughs from everyone. For example, as you can see from this excerpt, with Frederick starting, "The time will come. You'll slip up one of these days, my dear." "Oh, you think so?" "If I live long enough, remember all that fun we had when you tried to poison me." "Really, dear, you're so dramatic. The doctor said it was something you ate." "Oh, yes. Arsenic on the rocks. You'd do it again if you thought you would get away with it." "Oh, darling, what makes you say such terrible things?" "Something about you. I hear that hanging is very uncomfortable, just in case you get any more funny ideas. I've got guests to attend to. Now don't let the ghosts and the ghouls disturb you, darling." "Oh, my dear husband, the only ghoul in this house is you." "Fine, then. Sit in here and sulk if you must. I'm going downstairs to begin your party. Now don't you sit up here all night thinking up ways to get rid of me. It makes wrinkles." I also provided an additional script for Frederick's player to help him get through his introduction to the rest of the guests, with some tips and ideas for the presentation, a great opportunity for the player to ham it up a bit. This takes place right before midnight. Not only does Lauren re-explain the entire premise of the Ghost Night Party, but also provides the guests with some rather startling party favors. Right as Frederick is about to give his speech, I cut to Annabelle in her room, sitting at the vanity, brushing her hair and sulking, and her reflection suddenly ages into a decrepit, horrific-looking old woman. When I did this, the player had Annabelle scream insanely, which caused Watson Pritchard, David Trent, and Lance Schroeder's characters to race up to the bedroom to see what was going on. Annabelle's player did a good job of just playing it off after she looks back at the mirror and sees that nothing's actually the matter. "Oh, I'm sorry, gentlemen. I thought I saw a rat run by and it scared me." Totally in character for Frederick's player to just stand there and not bother to see what his wife was screaming about. When the men returned, he continued his speech. I asked Annabelle's player if she was going to stay in the room or go down and join the party, which, of course, she took the hint and said she was going downstairs, which allowed for an amusing entrance during Frederick's speech. Now, if you all know the bargain we made about staying the night, $10,000 apiece, of course, if any of you don't survive, the remaining guests will split the $50,000 evenly. If I should not survive, and that's when Annabelle makes her entrance. Ah, yes, my lovely wife, Annabelle. Everyone, always making her entrance at just the right moment. Now, where was I? Oh, yes. If I should not survive, you will be paid by my estate. It's during this speech Frederick presents the guests with mini coffins, and in each is a gun. Party favors, as Annabelle calls them. I had the clock strike 12 right at this moment, and the doors and windows to the house make a loud ka-chunk as the caretakers seal the house for the night, and I played a recording of a creepy grandfather clock striking 12. Ah, yes, I guess we're all stuck here now until 8 o'clock in the morning, regardless, eh? But fear not, we have some party favors for you in these little coffins. Now, in Frederick's character background, I let the player know that all the guns have blanks, except for his, which is the only one loaded, which is why the shooting vase demonstration is added in. One real bullet in Watson Pritchard's gun, and then the character immediately hands the gun to Watson. This is actually pretty effective, as none of the players thought to look or question the guns they were handed. This is my dear wife's idea, I dare say. I think it's rather dangerous. I think you all know how to use these. You just pull back on this lever and pull the trigger. And then he dramatically fires the weapon at a vase, and the effect of the vase exploding pretty much sets into the character's mind that these are real guns with real bullets. Of course, in Annabelle's character background, it's revealed that Annabelle's plan is to spook one of the guests, probably Nora Manning, but anyone. That anything weird that happens is all Frederick's fault. He's insane and quite possibly trying to kill everyone. The idea here is simply to manipulate one of the guests into shooting Frederick. Of course, Frederick's background has him aware of this plot and is prepared with fake blood to fake his own death. There are a few details that can occur during the opening scenes of the adventure or even after based on the other characters' backgrounds. For example, if Ruth Bridges thinks to ask about what research on the house she might have done prior to her arrival, I have 2 newspaper articles, one on the Hill family tragedy 30 years prior, and the other on Watson Pritchard's tragedy 15 years prior to the current night. If the player doesn't think to ask, then these articles can be found in scrapbooks in the library, the scrapbook apparently created by the caretaker, Sylvia Slides. In addition, as the 5 guest characters arrive at the house, they are all driven in black hearses, a joke by Frederick Lauren to add to the creep factor of the night. I ask each of the guest players what items they have in their overnight bags, and then have the drivers of the hearses carry the bags upstairs to their assigned rooms. This does 3 things. 1, it gives the players a reason to bring additional items not on their person to the house. It establishes that each of the characters actually have a room to sleep in during the night. And finally, it will give the characters a reason to go to the rooms after the house tour. As the guests arrive in the foyer, they can converse briefly and look at the creepy portrait of the Hill family, the last generation to live in the house before their murders. I handed out this portrait, which has the names of the family members. Eventually, Jonas Slides comes along and announces that Frederick Lauren has a dinner prepared for them. It's at this point the crystal chandelier crashes down on one of the characters, barely missing them, the electric wires sparking dangerously. When I played this out in-game, David Trent's player insisted on shutting off the power to prevent a fire, and accompanied by Jonas Slide to the basement, showing him where the power circuit box was. Of course, this is an old house that was retrofitted with electricity, so it's an all-or-nothing affair. They have to cut the power to prevent a fire, thus plunging the house into darkness. And since this is an old house, there are plenty of candles and oil lamps about to light the way. But now things have gotten darker and creepier, and there's an established bit of danger. Of course, there are creepy events and things in each of the characters' bedrooms that can happen, and these can give clues to the characters as to other things that are happening in the house. For example, Nora gets the old bedroom of Veronica Hill. There resides a creepy doll, Priscilla. During my game, Nora's player, my daughter Autumn in this case, decided to set up a tea party, and at that point I had the doll's head turn and I played this creepy track.
Mama, come give Priscilla a hug.
This, of course, freaked the character out, and that's when the doll grabbed what should have been a toy knife and started stabbing Nora. The damage wasn't that much, but minor cuts, and Nora ran screaming out of her room. Everyone comes to see what's going on. The doll ends up just splayed loosely on the floor, and of course everyone thinks Nora accidentally cut herself and is letting the house's atmosphere get to her. Let me take a moment to thank my players for role-playing that situation so well. Good job, everyone. The Air Force pilot, Lance Schroeder, finds that one of the drawers in the chest of drawers in his room is not pushing completely closed, and when he removes the drawer, he finds Vanessa's diary behind it. This is a major clue as to the goings-on in the girl's life the last 2 weeks before her murder at the hands of her brother Peter. Exploration of the house comes with its own perils and clues. After Frederick Loren concludes his speech, he asks Watson Pritchard to conduct a tour of the house for the guests. Using the provided cheat sheet and a bit of embellishment, the Watson Pritchard character can have a lot of fun, ramping up the creepiness of the entire affair with not only the backgrounds of the murders in the various rooms, but also his own personal tragedy. So, unlike some horror RPG scenarios, where it's entirely up to the game master to provide these aspects of the game, I'm actually trying to engage my players to participate in it. Of course, if you know your player, you'll want to assign the character of Watson Pritchard to a player who can handle such role-playing and will have a lot of fun doing it. My friend Jeremy, whom I went to GaryCon with, happily embraced the role of Watson Pritchard, and the outcome of his actions during the game went well beyond what I could have ever had planned. It was fun stuff. After the tour, Frederick will show the characters to the rooms and encourage them to have a restful evening, and that will appear to be it, but of course it's not. As the night progresses, various events begin to happen. Blood or slime drips from the walls. The heads of Watson Pritchard's brother and nephew show up on furniture, even in the beds of the various characters. The phonograph in David Trent's room spontaneously plays a creepy song all on its own.
The boogeyman is coming.
Gather all around me, little pickaninny boy.
And then there's a Zultan machine in the parlor which loudly erupts its recorded call-out.
I see you over there. Yes, you. Come on over and let Zultan be sharing with you your fortune.
Which should be creepy on its own if power has been cut off to the rest of the house. The Zultan machine is a separate character unto itself in many ways. It operates seemingly without any source of power. It will randomly call out at various times for someone to come over and let Zultan share with you your fortune. Zultan only works with the special tokens it occasionally spits out into the coin return. I have several pre-recorded fortunes to play, most of which just seem rather novelty and generic, such as
about for you from the great Zultan. Be happy while you are living, for you are a long time dead. What is it once, no? Give Zultan more money, and I'll give you more wisdom for your journeys.
Or,
An ancient proverb for you from the great Zultan. All of the easy problems have already been solved. You only live once, no? Give Zultan more money, and I will give you more wisdom for your journeys. An ancient proverb for you from the great Zultan. If plan A fails, all is not lost. There are 25 more letters in the alphabet. You only live once, no? Give Zultan more money, and I will give you more wisdom for your journeys.
of course, as the night progresses, maybe after someone has died, Zultan will begin continuously calling out, and there are two last fortunes of a more sinister nature. The final fortune directly telling the characters to be aware of the thing in the basement.
An ancient proverb for you from the great Zultan. If you believe that you are in danger and someone is trying to murder you, you're probably right. Give Zultan more money, and I will give you more wisdom for your journeys. An ancient proverb for you from the great Zultan. Beware, the thing in the basement. Give Zultan more money, and I will give you more wisdom for your journeys.
In addition to all of that, physical manifestations of ghosts appearing to be the various murdered Hill family members and Pritchard family members will attack characters either while in a group or by themselves. These are all constructs of the spawn of Yog-Sothoth trapped in the secret temple in the basement. If a character is killed by one of these things, the next one that shows up will be a bit tougher to reflect the increase in strength of the spawn. When we played this out, Watson Pritchard's character decided to grab a pickaxe from the tool room and tear down the poorly bricked up section in the basement. Beyond initially is the desiccated body of Peter Hill. Behind him is a shimmering blue light. On the walls are archaic looking cuneiforms, but also depictions of blood rituals and sacrifices inscribed on the walls. The shimmering blue light comes from an archway on the east wall, and anyone looking past Peter Hill's body will be clawed and attacked by Peter's corpse. And the monster is the second toughest monster besides the spawn itself. Anyone attempting this alone will probably be killed. Surviving the attack by Peter Hill's corpse leads to the sacrificial room, where there's an altar on the far wall, and before the altar is a massive blackish oil puddle that swirls and bubbles ominously and is the source of the shimmering light. Anyone entering this room will cause tentacles to erupt from the oil puddle that rend and tear flesh and attempt to pull the character into the pool to be consumed. When we played this out at my table, Watson Pritchard and Lance Schroeder investigated the basement wall, and Pritchard ended up getting consumed by the Yog-Sothoth spawn and killed, amusingly, before telling anyone about the book and the safe in the office. Now, after Pritchard's death, Lance wisely ran away, and now more apparitions begin to appear and attack the other characters. They initially ran to the library and tried to find something that would help in there. During their research, I went ahead and threw them a bone by saying that a set of weird ancient books seemed to be missing a volume. Having seen plenty of horror movies, Annabelle's player suggested searching the office for it, and of course they did look behind the portrait. Dr. Trent used his stethoscope on the wall safe to try to figure out the combination, which was a pretty good idea, so I gave him a good chance, and I let him roll with advantage. With the safe opened, they found the book. Now, for this book, I actually made up a mini Necronomicon prop to actually hand out to the players, which you can see here. And Nora's character quickly ascertained that it described a ritual for both summoning and unsummoning a spawn of a creature known as Yog-Sothoth. The downside was they needed blood from a fresh corpse to draw out a magical circle on the floor. And it was at this time that Annabelle's player Lexi, one of my more cunning players, used the saber she'd grabbed earlier from the trophy room. The very same saber that was used to kill Watson Pritchard's brother and nephew, and stabbed her husband Frederick in the back, much to the chagrin of Frederick's player. It was classic, and she did enough damage to bring him below 0 hit points. It was at this point I handed Mark, Frederick's player, the magic 8-ball and had him ask, does Frederick Lauren survive the saber stab by Annabelle? And the magic 8-ball's response? Outlook, not so good. With Frederick's death, the spawn broke free of the magical bindings in the basement temple and headed straight for the PCs, who now had themselves barricaded in the office. Pounding at the door, tentacles lashing through, Nora Dunning managed to use Frederick's blood to draw out the ritual circle and dispel the creature at the last minute. In the end, everyone corroborated Annabelle's story that it was one of Frederick's joke traps that led to his own demise. Annabelle paid their surviving characters their $10,000 plus a little extra for their silence. And Annabelle herself is sunning it up in the French Riviera on Frederick Lauren's millions. Switching back to the empty Hill House, to the hole in the wall in the basement, suddenly a shimmering blue light erupts from the place, and an otherworldly howl can be heard. Fade to black. The end? This year's horror one-shot was very successful. I took my bows and got my applause at the ending, and everyone had a great time. When making your own Halloween horror one-shot, I can't stress enough the importance of props, handouts, and pictures. Here's a look at my handout folder for the game. It does take a lot of prep work, but for one-shots especially, if you're going to finish the scenario in a single session, you've got to get the players into their characters and immersed in the game as quickly as possible. Props are key. Add to that the right mood lighting and music, and you've got a great game. Last year I purchased this Bluetooth old-style radio, primarily to listen to old-time Pulp Adventure radio broadcasts, but it's perfect not only as a prop at the table, but also functional for music and sound effects. Here's a small peek at my props folder. Maps, pictures, and handouts all add to the experience and work to bring the horror to your table. If you can achieve a few jump scares at your table, you know you're doing it right. And this brings this video to a close. For all my patrons, I've uploaded a zip file with all the audio, art, maps, graphics, and notes from my game, and you can download it from a link I sent out in messages. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you found this video fun and useful. I'd like to take a moment to thank my patrons for their support. Without them, this channel is just not possible. Please help me out with a like, comment, and share. Subscribe and click the little bell so you get notifications when I upload new content. Please check out my Teespring store, Ye Old Shop, for some fun gaming swag, t-shirts, carry bags, coffee mugs, and more. Consider supporting me on Patreon as well. If you feel inclined to send a tip, you can do so through my PayPal tip jar or Super Thanks right here. A link for everything is in the description. And as always, my friends, may your D20 roll true and game on.